that. Actually. Alright, I'm Brittany Price, the athletic trainer here at Bishop. I take care of all the athletes, do all the healthcare here. Full time at school. I work for Manley.
Alright, how did COVID affect you personally?
Personally, I guess it kind of jointly with work. Is that a question? But personally, my work life changed here. Like I don't think I saw any athletes from March 13th was the last game that I had here, and then I didn't see any athletes until June 15th. So like 2 months without any of my kids. And then in that time span, we went from working at the schools to contracted to do like any grunt work basically that the hospital needed. So I learned about like supply chain, which is a group in the hospital that literally orders all the supplies of the reason the hospital runs. So I did that for 2 months. And they just kind of bounced us around like literally wherever they needed us. We never had to work with COVID patients, but the stress of everybody in the hospital working with the COVID patients and us kind of doing everything around it was pretty stressful, but it was nice to kind of see the different parts of the hospital that you don't really see or hear about. They just kind of kept the place running, so it was nice to just kind of still be able to work. Like I wasn't furloughed or anything, so it was nice to be able to help too.
So you were working as an actual like respondent to like the COVID stuff?
Yeah, so in the hospital, so for example, I worked down the road at Kernersville Medical Center. It's got 3 floors. I worked on one floor where I covered the ED, pre and post-op, and that was only for like selective surgeries. Well, not non-selective surgeries, the ones that needed to be done. And we stocked those rooms. So we stocked all the linen. We didn't touch any of the dirty stuff. We stocked all the clean linen. Any orders the hospital made, we took that stuff and moved it to whatever department needed it. And then that stuff got allocated, so you know how basically everybody took all the toilet paper, all the hand sanitizer, like all that kind of stuff. And as that stuff got ordered for the hospital, we had to allocate it out to each floor. Same thing with the masks, and the people that were working with the COVID patients got first dibs on all the protective equipment. So that stuff we made sure was in each floor. So that was kind of stressful because you had to make sure that like, the ED got it first because they were typically the ones dealing with it, and then if they moved to a COVID floor, that kind of thing, you could move stuff as needed. So it was hectic, but I never had to work like face to face with any COVID patients.
How did COVID affect you though?
Well, there you go for jobs. So just to kind of reiterate that, I forget the other question I looked at. Yeah, so work was different. I was never furloughed, so a lot of people lost their job. A lot of athletic trainers were furloughed from March until like October. But working in a hospital or for a hospital, they were able to redistribute us and relocate us where they needed us, and so we never went without our job. And then I guess to answer the other question about personal life, just finding stuff to do to stay busy. And so it's weird not having athletics. I kind of have to have things to myself. I didn't know what to do, so I really went like on a workout kick, went hiking everywhere, and then just tried to make sure that everybody in my household stayed safe because my sister works at a retirement community, so I kind of took the means of my job and made sure that she was good, like Dad's job never stopped, that kind of stuff, so just make sure everybody was doing their part, both in the family, immediate family, and just family in general. But the biggest thing was just finding something to do because of work. But other than that, it wasn't bad. Like I said, I never lost my job, so that was the biggest thing. And I found a use for what I did or what I do, so it was pretty cool. It was stressful, but it was nice to be able to work.
So how did COVID affect your schedule?
So typically now I work on a second shift, so 1 o'clock to whenever athletics are done. When we got moved to redeployment, I went to like a 5 a.m. shift to like 2. So that was really hard because I went from like not getting up every day till like 9 to being up at like 3:45 every morning, and it was Monday through Friday. So that was pretty stressful because it was like there was no free time in that time span. Like you were running pretty heavy. So like 5 to 2 or 6 to 2 depending on the shift. When they moved us to another location, I ended up doing like mask fitting. So this is for people that knew that they were going to be working on a COVID floor. and we fit them for the N95. So there's like a process that we do to make sure there's no leak in the seal.
So they have custom masks.
Yeah, so we knew that they knew like a shift or two before that they were going to be on a COVID unit. So they would come down to us in the conference center, and this was in the bigger hospital in Winston, and we would fit them for N95. And so everybody's obviously made different shapes, different sizes, so we went through a process of all these different masks.
It was like masks like this, like full on face.
So it was like some like the duck bills that you kind of see, like the N95s or
back like the 90s.
yeah. So there's like a modern version of that, like a duck bill, and there's a modern version, kind of like a skinny K95 or 95 that you see. Some of the kids have it around here, but a lot of those they allocated to just healthcare because it was like that was the one mask that we could really kind of custom and fit to each person, and until we got better things. So now they have this universal one that they use that we custom fit, and it has filters and yada yada yada, and it lasted for a little bit of time. So that was a little stressful too because you didn't want there to be a leak in the mask because you knew that they were going to a COVID floor. And so we ended up fitting each person for like two. And then these were typically respiratory therapists, doctors and nurses that were maybe for sure going to be on those floors. And a lot of them just kind of took it full rein and they just decided to just work COVID. So they wanted to come down just to make sure that they did that. So it was different. So that was stressful too, but the work hours was crazy. I mean, like 5 a.m. to 2 or potentially 3 o'clock, like whenever you got off. I mean, it was insane. But I mean, like I said, you had work, you can get it done. So we made it do. So.
How did COVID affect your season?
Like sports.
Sport-wise, so from March 13th, that was the last game we had. I traveled.
What team?
To lacrosse. Yeah, women's lacrosse was the last game that I had. And I traveled, so my sister coaches. So it was the last game of the season. Nobody else had a game going on, and I traveled to Western Guilford. That was the last game that I worked. So that was kind of cool because it was alongside my sister. But it sucked because literally the following Monday, I got an email. My boss was like, you guys didn't have school. And my boss said, you're going to the hospital to do something. We don't know yet, but be prepared for like a 5 a.m. shift. Was literally the email that I got on Monday. And so from March 13th to June 15th, and I remember that because that's my dad's birthday, we went literally no athletics. And it was grunt work like 5 a.m. to whenever time you got off for that time frame. And then June 15th came around and it was not scary because I was glad to see my kids, but it was such a sigh of relief that things to me were starting to look up because I was back at school. So I hadn't been here like since. And so we had like a football practice and we had like 20, maybe 25 kids out. And it was kind of nice because it was, to me, that was kind of normal. Like I wasn't working in the hospital. I wasn't in scrubs because you literally changed into scrubs when you got there. And then you changed out so you had like clean clothes to like go home in. And so it was nice to not do that. It was nice to just be around my kids, like be here. Because I really did, my identity is in my athletic training, part of me. My work identity is here. Like, I don't know what to do when I'm not at work. Like over the summer, I'll get to school because they get to work camps and stuff, but it's not the same as like Friday Night Lights. It's not the same as all my kids being here. And at that time, you thought about, well, are they going to have, at that point, are we going to have graduation? And then we have like this COVID style drive-through graduation. So I was here for that. And it was nice to see the seniors, but it was sad because I made it a point to go to every graduation. And so it was like I'm standing there with a sign and literally my sign said, this athletic trainer loves all of her, like athletes, all of her kids, whatever it said, something like that.
So how did they do this? They like come get out of the car and get to.
Yeah. So their parents drove their cars. Some kids had floats, some kids had whatever. They all had like a Bishop like custom mask on for the year. They got out, they took a picture with Miss Shaw and I think Mr. Quarles possibly, or maybe just Miss Shaw beside the rock, and they had their diploma. And then, but each stop they had something along the way. So I forget who made shirts, but he teaches here. He made shirts. Yeah, he made shirts for everybody. So that was really cool. They kind of got like gifts as they went along the way. So all the teachers that came out. And then they were able to, there's a lot of signage out in the grass. So they were able to take pictures of that. But they kind of had to stay within their like car basically. And so it was nice, like I said, it's nice to see everybody. It was so weird because it wasn't anything traditional, but I knew I didn't want to miss it because for some of the kids, that was going to be the last time I was ever going to see them. And so it was nice to, unless they come back, for a visit or something. But so it was nice to that was kind of normal. But really, the normalcy I saw was June 15th. And then once we had our first game, so it was volleyball cross country. Once we had that, I knew that we were although everything else was hectic, I knew that this was the one thing that we could control was inside of the school, the athletics inside of the school. Now, if they weren't going to let us play against everybody else, that would be one thing. But to have our kids back and to know that you guys kind of bought into that process. So, okay, we're going to try to make this work. We're going to try to get through each season. That to me was like a breath of fresh air. Because for a while, being in the hospital, seeing all the COVID numbers go up, seeing all the cases that we had in the hospital, I was just like, to me, I didn't think it was, I thought we were going to be there for forever. It didn't seem hopeful. I say optimistic, but I wasn't hopeful that it was ever going to change anytime soon, so. It was nice to kind of get back to normal, and I will never forget. A, it's my dad's birthday, but B, that was the first day that things kind of looked normal. So.
How did COVID affect your personal life?
Like day-to-day stuff.
Day-to-day. So a lot of my friends are in healthcare. So, it was very hard because we knew we could not see each other. Everybody kind of lived in different states. My best friend and her husband were living in Seattle when it first started, which is one of the bigger spots that got hit because it's very, very multicultural. It's an easy travel across the water. And so for a while, it was really hard, and they were the main focus as to what's going on because they hadn't gotten to the East Coast yet. And the wife, so my best friend she's working at Seattle Children's. And so she's working with children, so it wasn't as scary, but it's still pretty scary because they were still in a hospital setting. And they had to, once school was over, they had to pack up and drive cross country. So to see how that took place in a week, that was pretty stressful. And then just everybody else, the older people, you start thinking about your grandma and things like that, where people were literally salvaging for whatever they could find. So, you're going to the grocery store just kind of getting that kind of stuff and whatever she would need. But she wouldn't have roads. She lives in Pelham, North Carolina, which is right at the Virginia line. So just little stuff like that where you're starting to think about everybody and how it affects them. If they have access to stuff, can they get access to stuff? So day to day, it was kind of you never knew what you were going to expect, especially for me. So at first, when I first started working in the hospital, my family was just we love you, but we're not going to see, we're not going to really see you, we'll FaceTime you, whatever. That was kind of the extent of it, which I understood, and I kind of wanted them to do that. And then as things lightened up, because everybody else is in healthcare, you just kind of figured out were they working on COVID units, were they not working on COVID units? Because a lot of my mom's side, they're all nurses, and a few of them opted to just work COVID. They were okay, I'm okay with it. And so they were it's part of the job. So that was kind of stressful because you knew kind of what they were the situation they're putting themselves into. Yeah, and so, but to know that they were willing to do it to help other people was pretty cool too. So, day to day, kind of didn't really know. As stuff lightened up, had a little bit of stuff, but kept it pretty casual. A lot of stuff was outside, all that kind of stuff.
So since stuff started getting normalized throughout the year, later in the year, how was your game days affected?
So I went from having normal paperwork to having paperwork literally up to my neck. So, you guys screen every morning with an app, but at the time that was a paper version from the state, and we hadn't gotten tech savvy with it, so we hadn't gone with a QR code yet, so we didn't start that until December. So we were doing everything by paper, contact tracing by paper, by hand, and it was a nightmare. Because you guys were screening for school, and then we had to turn around and screen again for athletics, ask you all the questions, do the temperature again, and then that affected, okay, well now you did that, now you can go play, kind of thing. And so the game stuff was normal, but the process beforehand was absolutely insane. And it still is, because now we've kind of moved away from that for the school, but the state still requires it. So every day I spent literally 2 hours screening, an hour 30 screening, and then I had to kind of shortchange the athletic training side of things to make sure that we got the screening stuff done because that had to be done before we could start athletics. So that was always tricky. But we made it work. And I think that you guys buying in was what made it easier for me. So I wasn't as stressed. I was more stressed about the coaches than I was about the kids because you guys knew that it was something that it wasn't me. You knew I just had to do it. So you guys sucked it up for me, which made me very appreciative because I don't think, in all honesty, like I've been screening kids since June 15th. I don't think that if y'all would have bought in, I don't think that I would have not lost my mind about it because I had to the seasons changed. I had different kids every season. The process had to be started over. So it was insane, but you guys bought in, which made it easier on me. And I appreciated that. And I know early on, that's all I kept saying. Like at the end of every week, I know this sucks, but I appreciate it. Thanks for being a good sport about it. And then as we went digital, you guys were like, thank God. You got me with the times, and it took me a little bit of time because we had to get everybody on board. So, I've got 300 athletes, I think we're at like 330 now, something like that. So to get everybody on board, every coach on board, it took a little time. So it was nice that everybody, was patient with it and bought in. So it was nice.
So, coming up on our last couple questions here, what is something that you gained, personally from that epidemic? Like it could have been you got closer to a family member, you prayed a lot, got closer to God. What did you gain from it, and how were you able to push through the COVID?
I think for me, it was, I had a lot of time to pray, to read, things like that. So that was nice. To me, I definitely got closer to the Lord, but that's because I had so much free time at home that I normally don't have it throughout the day to day. Like when I got off to work, everybody would still be at work. I had all this peaceful outside time in the summertime, so I had all this time to sit outside, read, pray, all that kind of stuff. So that was nice. The other thing too is for me, it reconfirmed my purpose and why I work, where I work, and why I do what I do. And so every year, I graduate seniors, and just like everybody else, and that's always tough. So to graduate seniors, but then to see all my kids come back, all of you healthy, nothing's happened to any of you, and then having to not do athletic training for 2 months, and then to be able to do that. So it's one of those things where if a kid gets hurt, the sport's taken away from him, right? In this instance, my hurt was COVID, was the pandemic. My kids were taken away from me for 2 months. And to know, would we ever have athletics again? Because it literally was just like all right, well, the numbers are, 3,000 a day or whatever it was, just insane stuff. Were we ever going to have athletics again? Was I ever going to see my kids in a normal state of athletics again? Or was it going to be like we don't know what we're going to do? Was I still going to have a job? All that kind of stuff. So it just kind of for me, it reconfirmed my purpose, that I knew that I was where I needed to be. Athletic training. I knew I needed to be in a secondary school setting, so in a high school setting. And it just kind of refueled my fire. Not that it was ever low, but it changed my, thought process in that and how I really do love what I do, and I tell you guys that all the time. But to have it taken away and then to have it given back to me was nice. And it was a newfound appreciation for what I do. Not that I ever took advantage of it or anything like that, but to know that I had it back, to know that I had my kids back, that was definitely the highlight of kind of everything coming full circle and getting back to this year.
So you said that during the COVID time you were able to pray a lot and connect with the Lord more. So would you look back on COVID, the whole experience, everything you learned from it? Would you look at it as being good or bad? You happy it happened, or
never happy that this many lives were taken? This crazy thing that nobody was needing everybody. They're still learning about it day to day, things like that. But happy in a sense of sometimes you kind of need a wake up call, and not that you're ever doing anything like a wrong decision going down a bad road, but you needed to fine tune and better yourself. And so for a lot of people, I really hope that they were able to find themselves, B, have a newfound appreciation for life. Because I feel like a lot of people don't do that. And then C, to live with a purpose. So I know a lot of people that came up with job opportunities, or they came up with a newfound way of them walking in their purpose. So whether this was a new job, starting a business, whatever the case may be, people really found themselves in that. And so I definitely do think that for some people it was definitely a blessing in disguise. For others, they were very hurt by it just because of either the product of their environment or the situations they were in from the beginning. It was always a fight to get out, or they knew way too many people that were taken by COVID, or things like that, where they were just affected negatively by it. I think everybody was affected negatively by it, but it's what you do in the tough times that makes you stronger. So you can either bow down to it and be like, oh God, this is never going to get better, or you can find a way to get out of it and make the best out of the situation. And I think that for a lot of people on the upper end, I think it was majority. I think a lot of people found purpose, found a way to keep moving, which is what we have to do in life at all times. This is obviously a global thing, but it's just a good example of what happens on the day to day. Like when you guys get out of school, like life still continues. Like there are failures that come along, but it's what you do in the failures, because that's where you learn your most life lessons that push you forward. And I have always believed in that, and this is just one of those situations where the entire world would have to deal with it. So it's like, how do we come back from that? So it'd be nice to kind of see where we move forward, where healthcare moves forward, where people's mindsets move forward. Do they find their purpose, or do they settle in the day to day? So things like that, you just kind of think about that as life goes on. But I definitely think obviously Saturday happened, global pandemic, but I think that a lot of people found a newfound appreciation for life, for their purpose, and what they needed to do to, shine a positive light, in the world as much as they could. So.
Well, that's it, Ms. Brittany. Thank you for allowing us to interview and giving us your time. I think I don't know if that's that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Thank you.